In October of this year, it was announced that the Anglican Church of Sydney had lost more than $160 million in shares due to the global financial crisis. The Glebe Administration Board, responsible for administering the diocese funds, was using a highly geared strategy, which means a high degree of risk for the investor. I spoke to Professor Jock Collins of UTS, who explained the strategy.
Yes, so a highly geared strategy is where you borrow a lot of money to make the investment. So, sort of if you borrow money to buy shares, it's highly geared. If you, borrow 80, 90% of a new investment to make an investment, that's highly geared. So the problem with that, it's okay as long as credit's freely available and cheap. But as soon as credit dries up and becomes very expensive, as happened in the global financial crisis over the last 12 months, then those particular people who are highly geared tend to collapse very badly.
The losses have resulted in the sacking of 4 archdeacons and cuts to the funding of Youth Works, the diocese's youth ministry arm, and St Andrew's Cathedral in inner Sydney. The Archbishop of Sydney, Peter Jensen, says he is most grieved by the losses, but that there was nothing wrong with the highly geared strategy of the board, and perhaps this is God's punishment on the diocese.
As time has gone on, I've worked through a number of these issues, of course. I decided that gearing was not ethically dubious, though I've had an argument with myself about it, as you can imagine. The bedrock of our faith is in the sovereignty of our great God. It may well be that he is chastising us for our sins, but if so, it is only further evidence of his fatherly love and care.
Members of the diocese, however, are questioning the behaviour of the board and believe this is clearly an instance where human error is to blame.
And I think for most of us we can see that it was very much human error, and that we can't blame God for something that was the result of human error, that people had a risky investment strategy and then they also chose to sell at a very bad time. They chose when the market was almost at its bottom. So I think it's pretty clearly human error that was the problem.
I'm at All Saints Anglican Church in Hunters Hill. All Saints is the home of Reverend Philip Bradford, the head of Anglicans Together in Sydney. Anglicans Together have been long-time critics of Archbishop Peter Jensen.
And they went into the fact that they had borrowed heavily, and they also admitted that they had made mistakes, but they didn't actually say we were wrong to engage in this particular kind of gearing. And I think for quite a lot of people in the church, that is an issue. Some people see it as a kind of almost a moral issue as to whether the church ought to be involved in that kind of investment strategy. In the past, the church has never done that, or the Anglican Church hasn't. Up to 2002, it always had a very conservative investment strategy, which meant that it was very safe investments, and if they'd had that kind of safe investing, they wouldn't have made as much money in the years that they were doing this gearing that they would otherwise. But that they wouldn't have suffered the enormous losses that they've had. The hierarchy of the diocese has said, yes, the Glebe Administration Board, which was responsible for the funds, did report to the Synod and say that they were gearing, etc. But the reality is that a lot of people don't know how to read a financial statement, and for the ordinary layman and woman, we're not very well educated in sort of high-level investments and gearing and so on, and most of us didn't even know what gearing meant. So we weren't given full and frank disclosure, I think, of what their strategy was until, things went bad. And I think we should have had the debate, I think, as to whether we as a church wanted our financial institution, the Glebe Administration Board, to actually follow that sort of strategy.
Another person sceptical of the actions of the church is Professor Philip Armand. Professor Armand is a professor in religious studies at the University of Queensland.
I suppose at the end of the day, and this isn't me talking, but in in the context of Christian ethics, it's perhaps unfortunate that there wasn't some reflection within the church with respect to its investments about issues like, I suppose, that go to the ethics of greed, the ethics of risk, losing money that can be put towards social services and social welfare. I mean, I don't know that they didn't, but they certainly should have been having more careful ethical reflections upon the way in which they were investing their money than they seem to have had.